Are you struggling to master gouache painting? Don't worry, I've got you covered. In this video, I'll explain the mistakes beginners often make with gouache paint and how to avoid them. Say goodbye to muddy colors, transparent paint, and wasted materials. I'll discuss each mistake and give you tips to avoid it. Gouache is not complicated once you know how to use it. Let's paint this bird with a wrong way and a good way. If you want to paint it as well, you have the link in description to the reference image. First mistake is adding too much water. This is the most common mistake that I see gouache beginners do, and usually they come from watercolor, so they are used to a very liquid medium to add a lot of water and to let the water do the job. That's fine with watercolor and it can work with gouache, but this is not what gouache is meant for. The pigments inside the gouache have a larger size than the one inside the watercolor paint, so they won't fuse as well as watercolor. So if you want to have blotches, cauliflower effects, and very diffused colors, that's fine, but you should be using watercolor instead of gouache. And if you use too much water, you will lose this opacity. So what should you do instead? Of course, add less water, but I'm not saying there is only one gouache consistency. There are a lot of different consistencies and they have different applications during your painting session. You can go with a bit of watery gouache for the first layers, for example, but don't soak your brush with too much liquid. This will lead to unexpected problems. You can dilute your gouache with water, but remove the excess water from the brush before applying it to the paper. This is really important. The other issue with having too much water in your mix is that you won't be able to blend properly. If you like blending, you need to have enough paint on the paper so you can blend the two paints together. If your two paints next to each other that you want to blend are too liquid, they won't blend easily. They will make a muddy color. Which leads me to my second problem that I see beginners do. Mistake number 2, not allowing the paint to dry completely. I know gouache is drying pretty fast, but not as fast as you think. And depending on where you live, the weather, the humidity, the temperature, it can take up to 2 or 3 minutes. It doesn't seem long, but if you don't wait for the previous layer to dry and you apply a second layer on top, you will get muddy colors because you will reactivate the paint below. And this is especially true if you are using too much water, as we saw in the first mistake. What should you do instead? Obviously, wait for the layer to dry, and you can do this by working on a different part of the painting while the first one is drying. I would not advise you to use a hairdryer because the time you use the hairdryer is approximately the time it will take to dry anyway. And also the heat is not very good for the gouache. You may have crackles in your gouache paint if you use a hairdryer too close and too hot to the paint. Let me know in comments, what is your biggest struggle with gouache? Because maybe I can help you. Third mistake, not getting the right consistency at the right time. And this comes from number 1 and number 2 together. You have different consistencies with gouache. You can call it water, tea, milk, cream, paste, whatever you want. But you need to dose precisely the amount of water depending on what you want to achieve in your gouache paint. If you are in the first layers, the background, you can use a watery consistency with not too much water on your brush, as I said before. And then increase the consistency as you layer. final layer with the details, you can use dry brush techniques, and for this you will get the paint straight out of the tube, even erasing a bit of the paint with a cloth on your brush before applying to the paper, and get this nice dry effect that will give texture to your paint. Also, if you want to paint fine details with a very small brush, you will have to add more water to your mix because the thick paint won't flow easily on the paper with a very fine brush, but not too diluted, otherwise you won't have the opacity of the gouache that you're looking for. So it's really a balance, and I can talk about it for hours, but the only way for you to master gouache is to practice. And practice is mistake number 4. If you don't practice, you won't master it. And for this, I have a workshop for you. Are you a beginner artist looking to explore the world of gouache painting? My workshop, Fill Your Gouache Sketchbook, is a comprehensive online course designed for gouache beginners. You'll learn techniques, tips, and tricks to create stunning gouache artwork that you'll be proud to show off. And I promise, if you follow along the workshop, you'll master gouache painting. Follow the link in the description to get started. Yes, I know this one sounds obvious, but practicing is key. You can sit for hours watching YouTube videos or tutorials or whatever you want, but unless you take your brush, your paint, your paper and do it and feel it, this is all about feeling. If you just watch video, you won't feel anything, and I can make as much video as I want. Until you practice, you won't master it. But you know that, don't you? So which one do you prefer? This one with a very liquid gouache, so I wasn't able to blend properly, and also my brush fell on the paper. Never mind. And yes, of course, I have exaggerated, so you see really the difference. And this one, which is made with a thicker paint, with more blending in the colors, more details, and there are 3 layers maybe. And this one I wasn't able to layer it because it was so watery, so liquid. And I did both with the same medium with gouache. It's just the amount of water that changes everything.